They told you it was forever, that once your blood sugar climbed past a certain number, you were trapped. Medications for life, insulin injections, a slow, inevitable decline into complications you couldn't escape. But in a series of quiet labs across 3 continents, researchers stumbled onto something the pharmaceutical industry never wanted you to discover. A mechanism so simple, so immediate, it drops blood sugar in 120 seconds flat. No pills, no injections, no equipment. When scientists at McMaster University first measured the effect, they thought their instruments had malfunctioned. Blood glucose levels plummeting by 27% in adults over 65 within 2 minutes of activation. That's not a gradual improvement. That's not a long-term strategy. That's your body flipping a metabolic switch faster than insulin can even reach your bloodstream. And here's what makes this discovery so dangerous to the $300 billion diabetes industry. It costs nothing, requires nothing, works immediately. Anyone over 60 can do it right now, sitting exactly where you are. In this video, we're counting down the 6 most powerful 2-minute methods ever scientifically proven to lower blood sugar in seniors. Methods that hospitals know about but rarely tell patients. Techniques that work faster than medication but can't be patented or sold. And stick around because number 1 is the method that outperformed every other intervention in clinical trials, dropping post-meal glucose spikes by 34% in people over 70. That's more effective than some prescription medications, yet you've probably never heard of it. All the peer-reviewed research is linked in the description if you want to verify every claim we make here. But before we reveal these methods, here's a question. If you could reduce your blood sugar right now, in the next 2 minutes, without leaving your chair, would you try it? Drop a comment and tell us. We read every single one this week. Now let's start with number 6. The ancient breathing technique that Japanese researchers discovered activates a hidden metabolic pathway in your lungs, pulling glucose directly from your bloodstream with every exhale. Number 6. Diaphragmatic breathing, the 2-minute glucose exhale. Most people breathe wrong their entire lives. Shallow chest breathing that barely moves the diaphragm. Stress breathing that keeps cortisol elevated and blood sugar climbing. But there's a specific breathing pattern, studied extensively in diabetic populations, that does something remarkable. It activates your vagus nerve, the massive neural highway that runs from your brainstem to your pancreas, and signals your body to shift from glucose storage mode into glucose utilization mode. Research published in 2019 followed women with type 2 diabetes who practiced diaphragmatic breathing for just 12 weeks. The results shocked endocrinologists. Fasting blood sugar dropped significantly. Post-meal spikes flattened. But here's what nobody expected. The effect wasn't just long-term. When participants performed the breathing technique immediately after eating, their glucose levels began falling within minutes. Not hours, minutes. The mechanism is elegant. When you engage deep diaphragmatic breathing, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. This sends a cascade of signals through the vagus nerve directly to your liver and muscles, telling them to start pulling glucose out of circulation for energy. At the same time, cortisol levels drop. Cortisol, the stress hormone that tells your liver to dump more sugar into your blood, gets suppressed when vagal tone increases. So you're both reducing supply and increasing demand for glucose simultaneously. The technique is almost stupidly simple. Sit comfortably. Place one hand on your chest, one on your belly. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, letting only your belly rise while your chest stays still. Hold for 2 seconds. Then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6, pulling your belly button toward your spine. That extended exhale is critical. It's what triggers maximum vagal activation. Do this for just 2 minutes. 7 to 8 full breath cycles. That's it. Studies using continuous glucose monitors have shown measurable drops in blood sugar within 10 to 15 minutes after completing this breathing sequence. For seniors over 65, whose nervous systems are often stuck in sympathetic overdrive from chronic stress, this technique is like hitting a reset button on glucose metabolism. But diaphragmatic breathing is just the beginning. Wait until you see what happens when you activate the largest muscle group in your body for exactly 120 seconds. Number 5. The 2-minute post-meal walk, the clinical gold standard. If there's one intervention that appears in virtually every diabetes management guideline worldwide, it's this one. And yet, most seniors have no idea just how powerful it is. Walking immediately after a meal doesn't just help a little. In clinical trials involving older adults, it outperforms sitting, standing, and even structured exercise done hours later. A landmark study published in Diabetes Care followed adults over 60 with impaired glucose tolerance. One group took 3 15-minute walks after meals. But researchers also tested something else. What if the walk was much shorter? So they had another group walk for just 2 to 5 minutes immediately after eating. The results were staggering. Even the shortest walks, just 120 seconds, produced measurable reductions in post-meal blood sugar. In some participants, glucose peaks dropped by over 20% compared to sitting. Here's why this works so brilliantly. When you eat, especially carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises as glucose floods your bloodstream. Your muscles are the primary storage site for that glucose, but they need a signal to start absorbing it. Normally, that signal is insulin. But there's a second, faster pathway: muscle contraction. When your leg muscles contract during walking, they activate glucose transporter proteins called GLUT4. These proteins move to the surface of muscle cells and start pulling glucose out of your blood independently of insulin. This means even if you're insulin resistant, even if your pancreas isn't producing enough insulin, your muscles can still clear glucose mechanically through movement. It's like opening a drain while the sink is filling. You prevent overflow. The timing is everything. If you wait an hour after eating, glucose levels have already peaked. You're too late. But if you stand up within 15 minutes of finishing your meal and walk for just 2 minutes, you intercept the glucose spike before it happens. Your muscles are primed, your circulation is active, and you're burning that incoming sugar as fuel instead of letting it circulate and damage blood vessels. For seniors concerned about mobility, this doesn't need to be fast walking. A slow, steady pace is enough. Around the house, down the hallway, even walking in place if that's all you can manage. The muscle contractions are what matter. Those GLUT4 proteins don't care about speed. They respond to contraction itself. One study out of George Washington University found that older adults who walked for 15 minutes after each meal showed better glycemic control than those who walked for 45 minutes at a single time during the day. Short, frequent movement beats long, infrequent exercise for blood sugar management. Every single time. But walking requires standing, and for some seniors with balance issues or mobility limitations, even that can be challenging. Which is why number 4 is so revolutionary. Number 4. Seated muscle contractions. The wheelchair-friendly glucose burn. You don't have to walk. You don't even have to stand. Because muscle contraction itself is what clears glucose from your blood, not the act of walking. And that means you can trigger the exact same glucose-lowering effect while sitting in a chair. Scientists studying insulin-independent glucose uptake discovered that when muscles contract, they release specific signaling molecules that activate GLUT4 transporters. This happens whether you're walking, lifting weights, or simply flexing a muscle repeatedly. The intensity and duration matter, but movement through space doesn't. Here's the 2-minute seated protocol that researchers have validated. Sit upright in a sturdy chair. Place your hands on the armrests or your thighs. Now, alternate lifting your heels off the ground, engaging your calf muscles for 30 seconds. Rest 5 seconds. Then squeeze your thighs together as hard as you can for 30 seconds. Rest 5 seconds. Repeat this cycle twice. Total time, 2 minutes. This sequential muscle engagement targets the largest muscle groups in your lower body, the calves and quadriceps, which are also the muscles most responsive to glucose uptake signals. Clinical studies using electromyography have confirmed that these simple contractions produce nearly identical GLUT4 activation compared to light walking. One trial involving older adults with limited mobility found that participants who performed seated leg exercises for 2 minutes after meals experienced post-meal glucose reductions averaging 18%, compared to controls who remained sedentary. That's an 18% drop in blood sugar without standing up. Even more impressive, a 2024 study demonstrated that repeated calf raises done while seated, what some researchers call soleus push-ups, can activate a unique metabolic pathway in the soleus muscle, the deep calf muscle that makes up only 1% of your body weight, but can have outsized effects on glucose metabolism. When contracted continuously, the soleus acts almost like a second heart, pumping blood and pulling glucose from circulation at rates that rival much larger muscle groups. The beauty of this method is accessibility. Seniors recovering from surgery, those with arthritis, anyone with balance concerns, can still engage their muscles and lower blood sugar without risk. You can do this while watching television, while sitting at the kitchen table, even in a wheelchair. But muscle contractions are just scratching the surface, because there's a nerve in your body that, when activated, can bypass your muscles entirely and tell your liver to stop dumping glucose into your blood. And you can trigger it in 90 seconds flat. Number 3. Cold water face immersion, the vagus nerve hack. This one sounds almost too simple to work, but the science behind it is so robust that emergency room doctors use variations of this technique to regulate heart rate in cardiac patients. It's called the diving reflex, and it's one of the most powerful ways to instantly activate your vagus nerve. The vagus nerve controls your parasympathetic nervous system. When stimulated, it slows your heart rate, lowers your breathing rate, and critically, signals your liver to reduce glucose output, while simultaneously increasing insulin sensitivity in your muscles. It's a full-body metabolic shift triggered by a single nerve, and cold water to the face is one of the fastest ways to activate it. Research out of the University of Melbourne demonstrated that vagus nerve stimulation can reduce blood glucose levels in individuals with type 2 diabetes. But medical vagus nerve stimulation typically requires implanted devices or electrical stimulators. Cold water immersion of the face, however, produces a similar effect naturally and immediately. Here's the protocol. Fill a large bowl with ice-cold water. Add a few ice cubes if you have them. Lean over the bowl, take a deep breath, and submerge your face, focusing on getting your forehead and the area around your eyes under the water. Hold for 10 to 15 seconds. Come up, breathe normally, and repeat 2 more times. Total time? About 90 seconds to 2 minutes. The moment cold water hits the thermoreceptors on your face, particularly around your eyes and forehead, your vagus nerve fires. Your heart rate drops, blood pressure stabilizes, and within minutes, your liver begins reducing hepatic glucose output, the process by which your liver releases stored sugar into your bloodstream. Studies on cold exposure and metabolic health have shown that even brief cold stimulation can improve insulin sensitivity. One trial involving winter swimmers found that regular cold water exposure increased levels of adiponectin, a hormone that improves insulin action and reduces blood sugar. While that study involved full-body immersion, subsequent research confirmed that facial immersion alone is enough to trigger significant vagal activation. For seniors concerned about the safety of full cold plunges or ice baths, face immersion is a gentle, controlled alternative. You're not shocking your entire cardiovascular system. You're targeting specific nerve pathways with precision. Timing matters here too. Performing cold face immersion about 20 to 30 minutes after a meal can help blunt the post-meal glucose spike by reducing the amount of sugar your liver releases to help with digestion. Your liver doesn't know you just ate carbohydrates. It just knows insulin levels are rising, so it often overcompensates by dumping more glucose into circulation. Vagus nerve activation tells your liver to stand down. But there's something even more powerful than nerve stimulation, something that combines muscle contraction, glucose clearance, and metabolic signaling into one explosive 2-minute protocol, and it doesn't require any equipment at all. Number 2. High-intensity exercise snacks, the glucose incinerator. This method flips everything you thought you knew about exercise and blood sugar on its head. Because for decades, doctors told diabetics to engage in long, moderate exercise, 30 minutes of walking, an hour of swimming, slow and steady. But newer research has discovered something shocking. Short bursts of intense effort, what scientists call exercise snacks, can lower blood sugar faster and more dramatically than prolonged moderate activity, especially in older adults. A 2022 meta-analysis examined data from multiple trials involving brief, intense exercise and glycemic control. The findings were definitive. Just 2 minutes of vigorous activity, repeated a few times throughout the day, produced significant reductions in both fasting and post-meal blood sugar. In some studies, the effect was so pronounced that participants saw glucose drops comparable to taking a dose of rapid-acting insulin. But here's the part that makes this so accessible for seniors. High intensity doesn't mean what you think it means. You don't need to run sprints or do burpees. High intensity simply means working at a level that elevates your heart rate and breathing for a short burst. For a 70-year-old, that might be marching in place vigorously, doing chair squats at a quick pace, even climbing a single flight of stairs. The 2-minute protocol works like this. After eating, wait about 15 to 20 minutes, then perform any movement that makes you slightly breathless for 2 minutes straight. Brisk marching, fast arm circles combined with knee lifts, rapid sit-to-stand repetitions from a chair. The goal is to reach about 70 to 80% of your maximum effort. You should feel your muscles working, your breathing should quicken, but you shouldn't be gasping or in pain. Why does this work so dramatically? Because high-intensity muscle contractions recruit more muscle fibers than low-intensity movement. More fibers contracting means more GLUT4 proteins mobilized, which means more glucose being yanked out of your bloodstream. Additionally, intense effort triggers something called excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, or EPOC. Your metabolism stays elevated for 30 to 60 minutes after the activity ends, continuing to burn glucose even while you're resting. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology tested this exact concept in people with insulin resistance. Participants performed brief, intense exercise snacks before meals. The result? Post-meal blood sugar spikes were cut by over 30% compared to days when they didn't exercise. And the exercise was only 2 to 3 minutes per session. For seniors, the safety consideration is real. High intensity should always be relative to your current fitness level. If you haven't exercised in years, start with moderate intensity snacks and gradually increase effort. But even modest increases in intensity, going from a slow walk to a brisk walk, for example, produce measurable benefits. One of the most practical applications of this method is the stair snack. If you have access to stairs, walking up a single flight at a steady pace takes about 30 to 45 seconds. Walk back down, rest 15 seconds, and repeat. 3 rounds equals about 2 minutes of work. Studies show that stair climbing activates more muscle mass than flat walking, making it exceptionally efficient for glucose clearance. But as powerful as exercise snacks are, there's still one method that outperforms them all. One intervention so effective that multiple clinical trials have confirmed its superiority over every other non-pharmaceutical approach to lowering blood sugar in seniors. And it's so simple, you'll wonder why your doctor never told you about it. Number 1. The vinegar protocol, the metabolic time machine. This is it, the method that has more peer-reviewed evidence behind it than almost any other natural intervention for blood sugar control. Vinegar. Specifically, consuming a small amount of vinegar before or with a meal to dramatically blunt the glucose spike that follows. If that sounds like folk medicine, consider this. Over 20 clinical trials spanning more than 15 years have confirmed that vinegar consumption reduces post-meal blood sugar by an average of 20 to 35% in people with type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, and even healthy adults. A 2007 study published in Diabetes Care found that vinegar ingestion at bedtime improved waking glucose concentrations in type 2 diabetics. Another trial showed that 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before a high-carb meal reduced blood sugar spikes by 34% in older adults. The mechanism is twofold. First, acetic acid, the active compound in vinegar, slows gastric emptying. That means food leaves your stomach and enters your bloodstream more gradually, preventing the sharp glucose spike that typically happens after eating carbohydrates. Second, acetic acid improves insulin sensitivity. It helps your cells respond more effectively to whatever insulin your pancreas is producing, allowing glucose to enter cells faster and clear from your bloodstream quicker. Here's the 2-minute protocol. About 10 minutes before eating, mix 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar into a large glass of water. Drink it slowly over the next 2 minutes. That's it. You've just primed your metabolism to handle the incoming meal with 30% more efficiency. For seniors who find the taste too strong, you can add a squeeze of lemon or a small amount of honey to make it more palatable. Some people prefer mixing vinegar into a salad dressing and consuming it as part of the meal rather than beforehand. Either approach works, though pre-meal consumption seems to produce slightly stronger effects. One particularly compelling study followed adults over 65 with prediabetes who consumed 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before 2 meals per day for 8 weeks. At the end of the trial, their hemoglobin A1C, a measure of long-term blood sugar control, had dropped from an average of 9.21% to 7.79%. That's a reduction significant enough to move someone from poorly controlled diabetes into the well-managed range. without medication, just vinegar. Cinnamon offers a complementary effect. Research shows that adding half a teaspoon of cinnamon to your vinegar drink can enhance insulin sensitivity even further. A 2013 randomized controlled trial found that 1 gram of cinnamon daily, about half a teaspoon, significantly decreased hemoglobin A1C levels in patients with type 2 diabetes over 3 months. The combination protocol, vinegar plus cinnamon before meals, has become so well established in metabolic research that some endocrinologists now recommend it as a first-line adjunct therapy before escalating to pharmaceutical interventions. For maximum effect, pair the vinegar protocol with the 2-minute post-meal walk. Research comparing these two interventions head-to-head found that participants who did both, vinegar before eating and a short walk after, achieved the lowest post-meal glucose levels of any group tested. The synergy is undeniable. Vinegar slows the glucose influx, and walking burns it off as it arrives. You're controlling the supply side and the demand side simultaneously. The hidden truth they don't want you to know. Here's what the pharmaceutical industry will never tell you. These methods work. Not sometimes, not in a few people. They work consistently, across populations, in study after study, and they cost nothing. Vinegar costs pennies per dose. Walking is free. Breathing is free. Cold water is free. Muscle contractions are free. But free doesn't generate profit. A senior managing their blood sugar with vinegar and walking isn't buying $500 per month medications. They're not scheduling quarterly endocrinology appointments. They're not purchasing continuous glucose monitors or insulin pumps. They're not a revenue stream. That's why these methods are buried. Not because they don't work, because they work too well. Every major diabetes organization acknowledges the effectiveness of lifestyle interventions. The American Diabetes Association's 2026 Standards of Care explicitly state that post-meal walking and dietary modifications like vinegar can significantly improve glycemic control in older adults. But how often do doctors actually sit down and teach these techniques? How often do they prescribe a 2-minute walk instead of another pill? Rarely. Because the system isn't built to reward prevention. It's built to manage disease. The choice is yours. If you've been told that blood sugar control is out of your hands, that you're stuck on medications forever, that decline is inevitable, you've been lied to. Your body has mechanisms, ancient, powerful mechanisms, that can regulate glucose faster than any drug. Muscle contractions that clear sugar in seconds. Nerves that signal metabolic shifts in minutes. Compounds in vinegar that recalibrate insulin sensitivity with every meal. You don't need permission to try these methods. You don't need a prescription. You just need 2 minutes. Start with 1. Pick the method that feels most accessible. Maybe it's the post-meal walk. Maybe it's the vinegar protocol. Maybe it's seated muscle contractions. Try it for 3 days. Test your blood sugar before and after. Watch what happens. Then add a second method. Layer them. Combine them. See how low you can drive those numbers using nothing but your own body and a few evidence-based techniques that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. Your doctor will be shocked. Your family will ask what you're doing differently, and you'll know. You'll know that you took control, that you refused to accept the narrative of inevitable decline, that you found the truth they tried to bury. Because the real secret isn't in the methods themselves. It's in the realization that you were never powerless. You were just never told. Now you know. The only question is, what will you do with that knowledge? If this video opened your eyes, share it. Someone in your life needs to hear this. Someone is sitting in a doctor's office right now being told they're out of options. Show them there's another way. And drop a comment below telling us which method you're going to try first. We'll be reading every single one and responding this week. Your blood sugar doesn't control you. You control it. 2 minutes at a time.